Evening, everybody. Welcome back to another special one-day presentation. This is going to be a deep dive with JamieLynn Warber. She is a survivor and a thriver of all her experiences, but primarily sexual abuse as a child in her family, and has created multiple summits and is a multinational best-selling author, co-authored multiple books. Her latest manifestation is out now, and we'll include a link to that later in the broadcast and in the video description at the end. But today is going to be a very long-form conversation. We're going to just start with what's present in this moment and see where it goes. And we've already been talking a bit backstage, and feel like it's going to be quite a wonderful dive. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her on. Everybody, welcome, JamieLynn.
Hi everyone.
Hi, welcome back to the stage.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
It's an honor to have you. Like I really appreciate being able to have these conversations. It's so much has come out of the last one, and it's really kind of shaped the way I am in relation with everyone in my life. Just being able to stop and pause and slow down and articulate and have these really long, in-depth talks. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I feel like just starting, just giving you an opportunity to share what's present with you right now. Like where are you at? How are you feeling? And what's going on in your mind?
Well, first of all, I feel like I should comment on it. A lot of people, when they take on a task like this, a business like this, they want to see it eliminated in the world. So no sexual abuse anywhere in the world. I think where I'm more drawn is that we all have empathy for one another. That we stop judging each other. I want no judgment in the world. So that any secrets that we feel we have that hurt us, we can share and be heard and validated. And any silly little thing that we got picked on at school by a bully can be heard and validated. And that we're not all weirdos, we're all humans. So I think that's my personal vision. That's my vision for my company as well.
Yeah, that's one I really appreciate myself. No judgment especially feels super important to me in everything that comes up. I do a lot of work with trauma victims and people with PTSD and who suffer sexual abuse. And that is like, it does feel like the most imperative thing is empathy and non-judgment. Like just holding a space where they feel comfortable being able to say anything.
Yeah. That's so important for someone who's been abused and for someone who hasn't. And honestly, we've all come to some sort of abuse. The thing is that we don't recognize it as abuse because it's not in the media, it's not plastered all over billboards. But if you've ever felt harmed by someone, if you ever felt like you've got this huge amount of guilt on you or anything that's harmful, you've experienced a trauma. It doesn't matter how big it is. It doesn't have to be horrible to be a trauma. So the space to be able to express yourself with your friends, family, especially your partners in life, roommates even, you have the ability to let go of the anger and stop suppressing everything that causes all these illnesses and aches and bad immune systems and brain fog. It all starts in the mind.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how it's all connected, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not too long ago, I was actually having a conversation with somebody on Twitter, and we were talking about Bernie Sanders and how I was just noticing his behavior and how in a lot of ways, like what he says and how he responds is very similar to someone with PTSD. And, I was just sat with that for a second. I was like, wait a minute. He's been in DC for what, 35, 40 years? How is that not a traumatic experience?
Yeah.
Right? Like, so yeah, like that, like just even just bringing awareness to all of the things that are traumatic to us, no matter what they are. And no matter how little, like there is no trauma that's too small to be, opened up and looked at, right?
Well,
it can be.
An example. I was kind of an angry child, go figure, with what I was dealing with. And everybody, we were at an art table, and everybody was sharing my pencils because they were all nicely sharpened. And I had this boy next to me, and he sharpened both ends of my pencil, and I was like, why did you do that? Like, now they're not pretty anymore. So I felt hurt and felt like I should hurt him back. And I was gonna go lightly, like jokingly, like tap him on his arm, but I ended up jabbing the pencil on him, and it left a red mark, and it left the pencil lead, not the stick part, but just the color, in his arm. And I looked at him, we were both in shock, and we both started laughing. I was like, what did I just do? And the whole group was like, don't make Jamie mad. She'll stab you with a pencil.
Oh, and how long did that stick with you?
And well, years later, we were in middle school and we were on a field trip and we were skating. And he comes up to me because we hadn't been in class all that much after that. And he comes up to me, he's like, you wouldn't believe this. I was like, what? He's like, it's still there. I'm like, are you kidding? We both knew exactly what we were talking about. And I went to the friends that were at the table. One of them I remembered anyway. And I was like, can you believe it? That's still on his hand or on his arm. And it became like this joke, but it was really traumatic in the moment, to the point where I'm not going to forget it. Like, I hurt somebody. We laughed about it, but that was horrible. So it was traumatic that he sharpened both ends of my pencil. That's what sparked the anger. It was traumatic for him that I stabbed him, like, so, but we can laugh at it now. And when you can laugh at it or make fun of it or pick on it, then you've healed from it.
So what was that like? Like that's such an instantaneous thing, like the stabbing the pencil and then like right into the laughter. Like, did you actually catch that moment of transformation where it switched from trauma to?
It was his reaction, because I was about to cry. If he wouldn't have smiled, I would have cried. But when we can know exactly that moment, that's when you have the power. That's when you're empowered. You've given yourself permission to look, become aware, and now make a choice. Am I going to cry while he's laughing, or am I going to laugh with him? And it was literally a millisecond that I had to make a choice on that.
And like, I love that example. That's so perfect. Like, that actually scales up and scales down. Like, to me, that is the cycle of violence that just continues on through this world.
Yeah.
Is, there's this moment of pain, and if that moment is not recognized and awareness is not brought to it, and the lesson that can be learned from the pain is learned, then that pain manifests as anger, as physical violence, as emotional violence,
Well, if you could imagine, it's a scenario. This didn't happen, but what if I dated him in middle school, high school? What if he held that as anger and wanted to get revenge on me in middle school and high school, and I would have ended up in an abusive relationship at a very young age, and it would have all stemmed from the moment. He wouldn't have gotten in that relationship because he cared about me. It would have been for a revengeful person, but that was not him. He's a fun-loving kid or guy now. And when we look at the bigger stuff, because the sexual abuse was happening so consistently, and we all knew it needed to be kept a secret. In some ways, we didn't really want to lose our secret for a while. We weren't ready for that. It was night and day. So as a kid, you can adapt to so much. But the thing is that if you don't work on it as a kid, you're going to have to deal with it as an adult. or it turns into something bad. So it was very repetitive, one trauma after another. Every couple of days there'd be something. And then, daylight would come and it'd be like it didn't even happen. And I could act normal, be normal. I wasn't nervous or scared, because in the daytime, nobody looked at me that way or talked to me that way until I became a preteen. So I was 8 years old when it started. And because I didn't deal with that, by the time I got into a loving relationship, was in college, my brain was so full and so scattered, I didn't know what to do. So at the age of 14 up until the age of 22, I was cutting myself because I didn't even know what to look for or what questions to ask. I didn't know there was an alternative to dealing with this pain. And when you cut, you release endorphins, and it's like being high. You just kind of fall asleep when it's all over. And there was one moment where it was like the very last cut I ever did, and it was for no reason at all. My husband and I we weren't married yet, but we had bought a home, and it was perfectly clean. Everything was unpacked and in its place, and for the first time in my life, I stood in a clean house. Like, every room was clean, and I'd never experienced that before. And I'm standing in the kitchen, and I look at the clock, and I got a half an hour until my fiance gets home. I don't have schoolwork, I don't have a job, and I didn't really do anything all day. So I'm expecting that he's gonna come into the house and yell at me because I did nothing all day. But what I was doing was overlapping the experience of my mother coming home and doing that every night. And then him coming home and like, "Why are you blowing up on me? I just got home from work. Can I relax for a minute first?" I'd love a hug and a kiss. What's going on with you? Um, Later on, I did go to therapy, and I told my therapist about that, and he's like, "It's not likely you'll ever cut again." And I was like, "Well, why is that?" Well, he told me the statistics that generally cutters stop doing that in their 20s, early 20s. It's just a natural thing that if you start it, you will stop it in your early 20s. The other thing, I think it was like he was telling me so that it was a reinsertion. Like, I think I'm done with this. Yes, you're done with this. Okay, then I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, like, okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. So we can play with it throughout the conversation, but like just that last little bit, that goes back to how word like declarations create reality, right?
Yeah, they do.
And so like that's that moment of confirmation. I'm done with this, and then that becomes reality.
Hmm.
Um,
What you say has power, and it's even more powerful when you get agreement with you. So think about that as the negative. You look in
mhm.
the mirror and you go, "Oh, I'm so ugly," and someone goes, "Wow, what's wrong with your hair?" They didn't even say the word ugly, but you're gonna translate it in your head as ugly, and then you have your affirmation. You've just declared that you're ugly. Now, if you think about it, those weird little things that people put together of like, "Oh, look at this Brady Bunch girl and she's not pretty anymore." Those things are horrible, but it's an example. If one of the Brady Bunch girls had ever thought that she wasn't pretty enough or wasn't enough in some way, is it really surprising that she's not pretty 30 or 40 years later?
No, not
She's
at all.
got that in her head.
Yeah.
That it's a done deal unless something interrupts that thought. Something had to interrupt the thought of the cutting thing, and something had to interrupt the thought that my husband's not my mother. He had to say it a million times, I bet. I mean, I'd be rich if I hit, or he would be anyway, if I gave him $1 every time. But there was an awakening. Like, really, my mom isn't here to yell at me.
Mhm.
This is in my head. Okay, so I faked it until I made it. If I were nervous and panicked and stressed and he walked in the door, I gave him a hug and a kiss anyway. I was terrified, not of him, but what I had been dealing with for over 18 years.
Yeah, just that situation that was just ingrained and had become habit, basically.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you got to authentically ask yourself, in some cases, am I really in an abusive relationship? Does my partner actually suck? Is this actually not what I want? Or am I just saying it's not what I want? I would complain to people about my husband and how he doesn't do this right and he's not doing that enough and he's not doing this enough. I had so much stuff stacked up against him that he was failing every day with me.
Yeah, that's that's something I'm very aware of in my own life as well. Like actually getting past my own preconceptions and allowing myself to see the person in that moment, not necessarily the history or the story that I've built up around that person.
Right.
And one thing, like one phrase that I really, really hold in that is, I hold the intention to meet everyone for the first time, every time.
And with yourself.
Yes.
You're not who you were yesterday.
Yeah.
Definitely not who you were 10 years ago.
Somebody said this. They said, if you look back on your younger self and you're not slightly embarrassed, you haven't progressed.
Yes.
Like,
I did that somewhere. I don't know, but yeah. It's great. It's great. The other day I walked past a picture of my grandma and I had this, I suppose you could call it a flashback. I never got that, what a flashback is defined for me by a therapist, but I felt like I was literally in that room, but yet still here. And my grandma's asking me to stay, and I'm saying that I can't. And I got so mad at myself because she died shortly after that. Like, that was an opportunity I could have taken to be with her and support her in whatever she needed. But I let the fear get the better of me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I wanted to scream. And it's like, I felt her come in and say, it's okay. I know you love me. That was a moment in time. Forgive yourself.
that's the power of awareness.
Yep.
Like that is, this is something that I don't feel is taught growing up in Western society, is the ability to maintain mindful awareness and emotional awareness and just how the mind works in general. And there's like, that leaves us, or well, it left me, I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but it left me feeling inadequate in so many ways. Because there were so many moments where I didn't pick up on the context of what someone was saying, or I missed a task, like someone asked me to do something and I totally missed it because I wasn't paying attention, or I misinterpreted what someone was asking of me because I had another story going on in my head that I wasn't aware of.
So there's a couple steps to this. You have being present, acknowledging that you're not present. Sorry, I missed that. I wasn't really listening to you. Can you repeat it? Then you have the person who said it in the first place, someone who thinks that they have to bring you down with shame because you're new or because you're young. If they had empathy going, oh, yeah, I do that too, especially with my wife when I get home from work, like I can't listen to her right away. Like, whatever it is, you've just opened a pathway of communication, connection, and partnership, teamwork, only because you shared the human experience. Forgiveness of yourself. And there was one other thing that it misses my brain at the moment. But just be gentle with you and those around you, and you wouldn't believe what comes out of that.
Yeah. Be gentle and be real. And to me, realness is sharing those moments of, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't listening, or, oh, I'm not sure if I understood that. Could you rephrase it? Or I didn't do this because I was scared of something. And then just like, sharing my personal experience of how it felt to me with that other person.
Yeah.
And like that invites that space of empathy and compassion and co-creation. It's like we're all wrapped up in our own little worlds, and that bubble of thought, of ego, of whatever, it insulates us from feeling the emotions of those around us.
I honestly think the only time we feel hurt is when it's an ego hit.
Mm-hmm.
I experienced that yesterday. I had posted something, and I'm making a declaration. I'm no longer posting political. I went and took them all down. But I did something about following your intuition, because it was something Europe said was healthy, but the United States didn't yet say it was healthy, so therefore it's not healthy. And my thing was follow your intuition, and the response was, wow, that's ridiculous. That was a hit to my ego, because that is what I'm all about, is follow your intuition. So I thought long and hard about it, and I realized that this person who's a part of my family doesn't know who I am and what I stand for. So I shared with them what that was, and I invited them to realize that we might not be friends because our differences are so far off, but we could be. And I still love you.
What was the response?
Nothing back yet.
Uh,
So I'm not sure how that will go. And I barely see this person. My family is so big. It's hard. We got 50 people on either side of my parents, so
wow.
or more. So, um, I've and there's so many friends out there in the world. So that's something else that can be said is if people around you don't align you with you, if they're not your cheerleaders, if they're not your coaches and supporters, then we don't necessarily need them. Love them, but you don't necessarily need to spend your time on them with them. Sorry, kids' toys got hit, but
It's okay. No worries.
um, because
Um,
you want to create a life of support and a life that feels good. Why would you keep people around you that don't allow you to feel good?
yeah. And that's not limited to just like people that you barely interact with. You know, I actually had to break up with my mom and my dad for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it became a habit that lasted far longer than it probably needed to. But like it did feel necessary and healthy and even loving for myself to do that in that moment, and to hold that distance from them for a little while. And actually that kind of invites a pivot here. Would you be willing to go back and share about your childhood, like your family growing up, and like like all the like how many brothers and sisters do you have, and like where did you guys grow up, and you know what's the story there?
Okay, so I actually have, technically, depending on how you look this, I have 3 other siblings. So, when my offender moved in with us, he was actually adopted by my parents. So we didn't call him brother until the year he moved out as an 18-year-old.
Mm.
It finally settled in with us that you've lived here for more than 10 years, you're our brother. So then when I went to court and shared my story, he kind of became not my brother anymore. So then later on, I found out that I have an actual half brother. So he came into the picture. My sister and I are 2 years apart, and we fought and shared everything. And then we had our 2 separate rooms and still fought over everything because we're girls. I think my biggest regret with her is that we are both on the very different sides of how to deal with our family as a whole with the sexual abuse conversation and the mental illness conversation. we have two different views on it. So we do struggle to see eye to eye or connect. And it's very easy. Like, it's too easy for me to be able to say something, not realizing that I'm hurting her.
Or, well, hurting her ego anyways.
Exactly. Yes. Hurting the ego. I think it's very great that you made that definition so clear, because I'm not physically hurting her, right? I'm not jabbing her with a pencil. But she feels pain inside her physical self. We feel it in the heart or the gut, or our legs get shaky and weak, or our hands are shaking. We feel it physically. So just to recognize, like, what's going on when you are triggered or upset or your ego got hit. So I grew up. Oh, go ahead if you wanted to say.
Well, just yeah, real quick. I feel like it would be helpful to kind of define what we're talking about when we say ego in this particular case. Because I feel like you and I have a very specific definition that may not carry over to a lot of other people. Make sure we're on the same page. So to me, the ego is it is the totality of all that I learned growing up. So it's all the influence and all the beliefs that have come in from parents, friends, teachers, media, pastors, school, the whole 9 yards. It is all the fears that arise as a result of those beliefs. It is all the emotional trauma that has come up in my life and all the desires that particular personality wants to satiate or silence or numb or heal those particular wounds and fears.
And if we want to simplify it, it's all the shoulds.
I like that.
It should be this way.
Yeah.
The house should be clean when I walk through the door. Dinner should be done. The kids should be asleep by 7:30. Yeah, right. Live in reality. Until 9 o'clock. You can put it right there. Good luck. But it's the shoulds. And when the should and the expectation don't get lined up, then the ego gets hit and you feel the emotional blow on your physical body.
Yeah, exactly. Like that. So the way I kind of look at it is, I am not this body. I am not the mind. I'm not this personality. I am not the ego, as it were. Mm-hmm. But I have a body. I have a mind. I have an ego. And in this world, those things can be hurt.
Yep.
But what I am is so much bigger than all of that and can never be hurt, at least as far as I can tell. Like I've never actually experienced trauma to the essence of what I am, which to me, it just feels like this very calm, centered, joyous space, awareness.
Yep. And you know who you are. And so there you can say that.
Yeah.
Now, people who don't know who exactly they are, they're like, no, I have too much anger to be able to see that. Or I have too much anger, that can't be possible. It's that they can't see it. That's all.
Yeah, exactly.
So the basics of my childhood, I grew up in a farming community. My yard was 3 acres. I thought everybody lived like that. Everybody had to drive a lawnmower and knew how to do it without hitting stuff. I learned that wasn't true when my middle school boyfriend ran into a tree. And I'm like, how did you not know to turn? You had a whole acre to make up your mind. Oh, poor guy.
Oh, buddy.
So my dad is such a tinker, still has that lawnmower and it's still dented. So I say boyfriend, and it was more like I was educated that me having a boyfriend at these ages was inappropriate. So I don't know how you want to look at that, but in this case, he was the ideal version of a boyfriend because there was no most of it was over the phone. He lived an hour away, and we didn't talk about sex. All we did was hug when we saw each other or hold hands. Like, it was very simplistic. And after 8 years of sexual abuse, it felt like bliss. Like, in this relationship, we're doing everything that I want for a change. And one night he decided that wasn't enough and that it should go to the next level. And I can't believe how bad I panicked, because everything that I thought was perfect was now shattered. And so when I went to about a year and a half later, be in a relationship who's now my husband, I was terrified that that feeling was going to happen again. So much so that I was the one who initiated the intimacy. I didn't ever want to feel that way again. And I've had conversations with him that, he wasn't looking for intimacy just yet. Like, he could have gone a whole year without it. And I'm like, really? Damn it. But at the same time, we had lots of fun, and I experienced love, and I experienced, I forgot the word right now. Consent. He's like totally right there listening to all this. So he says hi.
Hi.
We celebrated 19 years of being together, because I met him when I was 15. Yeah, knowing each other, because I met him when I was 15, and we'll be together for 13 years as far as marriage, I think, this year, or 12 years. But for him to be like, is this okay? Are you good with this? Are you good with that? I'm like, where did you come from? Like, people like you exist? Really? You don't just do what you say? So, to back it up a bit, and it overlaps with my husband, that when I was ready to tell and ready to be done with the sexual abuse, I was actually driven to a point of what felt like the closest thing I've ever experienced to insanity. So I was also dealing with an online pedophile who, we didn't have a label for that at the time. And all the chat rooms were open and free. And this guy kind of stalked me. And I was in a relationship with him for 3 years. And then he suddenly was saying, what's the biggest city near you? I'm going to fly into there. And then you're going to come down to that city and we're going to have a weekend. And I'm like, how do you think I'm going to do that, dude? I'm 14. You're 40 something. This is disgusting. And when I finally said that, it was an eye opener. Everything else in my life was also disgusting. And I couldn't take it. And I started fearing, maybe I have a 2-year-old at home and I'm in a marriage and one of my offenders calls up for a quickie and I can't say no. Like, I don't want that in my life. I don't want that for my kids. And so, and I was always a person to think that far ahead. When I was 7, I saw the faces of my daughters. I knew how far apart they were going to be in age. I didn't know their names, but I saw a lot. And over time, I created who I wanted for a husband, and he showed up. And all the ways that I had wished for, all the ways that I had manifested. That is in my book.
So yeah, there you go. Perfect plug.
And so my manifestations were coming true. I knew I was backed by the universe. I talked to him all the time. Say they or them. It felt like a group to me. Which that story is in When Angels Speak, when the spirit guides came to me and reminded me of the powerful path I'm on right now, and set me up powerfully for that. So, yeah, sheer terror. And so I shared it with the 40-some-year-old. I shared my story with a guy who didn't realize I was at a wedding dancing with this guy, and he had no clue that I was 15. And we'd kissed and exchanged numbers, and then he sobered up and realized, how old are you? This needs to stop today. I cried it to him. because I didn't want to lose that attachment because I thought it could have been something. Ironically enough, my husband did attend that wedding, but he had left before I got there. And who else did I tell? My best friend. And my parents at the time were redoing their kitchen, and we were taking down the slats of the wall. In the old houses, it's like a board and then some, I forgot that word too, plaster, and then another board and plaster, and it's all like super close together, and then drywall on top of that. So we had to take all that down to redo everything. And I was just smashing and smashing and smashing, and I almost broke through the outside of the wall. I was so mad. And my friend comes over, and she's like, "What's going on? You like texted 911?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is bad," because my 40-year-old guy was like, "This is really hurting you. You need to stop it." I'm like, "I need to stop it with you too. You're not helping." He's like, "Well, I'm going to make you a promise. I'm going to stop doing what I'm doing." Because half the time he didn't know my name. He knew a lot of 15-year-old girls. So all of that was going on at once. It's even hard to talk about it because it's really fuzzy. So the next school day, I went into the office and just dropped a bomb on my sweet counselor's desk. And she knew one of the offenders involved because, of course, my brother went to my school. So, but he's my cousin. So then I went to the police station or the sheriff's office, which is all connected with the courthouse and the jail in the town I was in. It's all one thing. They dropped me off at social services first across the street because I told at like 10 in the morning, and by 1 p.m. they were there to take my statement, and then by 2:45 the buses had left. So I didn't have a way home, and they would have preferred that anyway. So basically I was in their custody. Dropped off at social services. My mom thought like I vandalized something. I'm like, "Really?" You thought I like broke something at school? Thanks. She's like, "Well, in retrospect, I would have rather." Like, yeah, I get it. I wrote 13 pages that in 2 separate sessions, and I was nervous the whole time. They wanted dates, times, locations of every occurrence over the past 8 years. I was like, "Do you realize I was a little kid when this started? I didn't pay attention to the time of the year." So, and again, as a reminder, the reason I can laugh about it is because I have healed this.
Yeah.
So if you're triggered right now, just take a deep breath and just know that it is possible to heal from this. That's why I'm laughing. Somebody had gotten into my head about one of my offenders actually, who wasn't going to be charged because he was a minor.
Just real quick, how many were there total?
5.
Yeah.
There were 3 older than me, or 4 older than me, 1 younger. So I wanted to tell my aunt and uncle myself. I would have rather have told everybody myself that I had done this, but with the older ones, with the 3 older ones, it was now illegal for me to talk to them. And it would look bad for the case and all that. So I called the ones that wasn't listed on that illegal list and told my aunt. And so my younger than me cousin was in the background shouting, "That bitch is lying to you. Hang up the fucking phone. She's a bitch." Natural reaction. His world just got exploded. Everything that we had promised we'd never talk about was being talked about. A couple days later, his older brother had called me, and he's like, I get it, but you got to take it back." I was like, "Take it back? Are you kidding? You can't just take something like that back. What, are you going to break into the sheriff's office and burn the papers? That's about the only way you're going to do this." And he's like, "Well, the one that was my brother, he's getting married. You're going to ruin his life." I was like, "He's ruined mine. If it wasn't for him, none of this other stuff would have happened. We wouldn't have happened." And he's like, "Yeah, I get it. I guess I'm wishful thinking." And at that point in time, him and I had ended it on good terms and knew that we weren't going to be talking to each other for a long time. Then I tried to go in and take it back, and they threatened me with going to a juvenile detention center for 6 months. So my mom said, let me talk to her. And because basically by taking it back, I was committing a crime. And my mom, she's like, are you sure this didn't happen now? I was like, you know what? No, it did. And she's like, well, why are you saying that it didn't? I was like, because Patrick told me to. Oh, sorry. Because he told me to. And who knows? He might be on my summit someday. He's so good with all this stuff. So I nearly risked my life again for the sake of them, or one individual person at the time. So in the midst of that, my brother offender, my cousin, had asked his brother to come up and support him with something and didn't tell him what it was. And then suddenly that name I can say because he was on my summit. Rob was living in the city an hour south, and so he goes down to Rob's house and says, hey, I need your support with this. Can you come up tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. at the sheriff's office? He's like, yeah, sure. You're my brother, of course. And he walks in and they want to put the cuffs on Rob right away. And he's like, what just happened? Rob's 19 at this point. And so I read the script as best I could because it wasn't word for word translated, or transcribed. But it took about 13 minutes for Rob to tell 100% the truth. And he was the only one to do that. And I felt love from him when I read that. Because at first I'm reading it, I'm like, you idiot, it happened. Why are you denying it? But I'm also thinking like, I wasn't thinking that they're trying to protect themselves, which is what they were doing by denying it.
Yeah.
So Rob didn't have a lawyer. His two brothers did. And so they only admitted to parts of things that could get them the least amount of time, but still confess to something. Because I was too consistent in my story. Every time they questioned me, it was the same thing, or they would say something different. I'd be like, no, I told you it happened in the summertime. And so my consistency provided them with the confidence they needed to convict. So Rob was sentenced with 15 years at the age of 19. Can you think of yourself at 19? Like, your world is just starting.
Yeah, life is over, basically.
Yes.
That's like the end of the world.
Yep. And so he had 1 year in jail, and this guy in jail told him, do whatever you want because they're going to lock you up for the full 20 anyway, which is max. And so he did whatever he wanted when he got out of jail, and then included having sex, which it was illegal for him to do, fathered a son, and started getting his life in order. But he had already had 3 checks, you're out. So we were back in the courtroom while I was in college, and I was shaking and terrified and couldn't believe that he couldn't keep his shit straight. I could barely keep my shit straight, but at least I was going to school and getting decent grades. Like, he wasn't even going to school. How hard is it to maintain a job and go home? But he wasn't following the rules, and he had about 60 of them to follow. So he goes in for 12 years. And at some point, I started writing in for the parole hearings, and I moved, and I wanted to let them know I was moving. And they were like, did you realize you could do the restorative justice dialogue? What the heck is that? And did you realize you could go to parole hearings? What? Really? Well, of course, you're the victim. So I started going to the parole hearing first. Then I started the restorative justice dialogue, where I have an opportunity to ask all my questions. He can ask all his questions. Anything that's too triggering, they take out of the conversation, and we don't even know about it. And we answer each other's questions. And then about 8 months after that, we had a 3-hour conversation where we started a new relationship. And according to the state of Wisconsin, we do have a healthy relationship. So he was released from prison 2 years ago. Then, like, just days after my birthday, so I was, like, still celebrating. I was so happy for him. Helped him find a place to live. I was talking to his agent. He already had a job, so he was on the path to success. And I shouldn't say was, because he's still very successful. He's in a loving relationship. We're actually allowed now to have phone conversations, which took a year to establish that after doing emails for a while. And this is all made up. Like, nobody does this. Nobody wants to talk to their offender. The very last parole hearing I attended, he looked right at me and he said, "This was not your fault. I took advantage of your love and your kindness. This was not your fault, and I don't want to hear you say that it was." All of it. I'll just take it for everyone because they're not going to say it.
And if I followed all that, it was his full confession, the truth, that really opened up that forgiveness for you. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
He validated everything that I was saying. And to give you an idea of what the relationship was like with him, he would clean my room because he liked hanging out with me. He would read my diaries and my stories because I asked him to. The lawyer, the DA, tried to twist it and say that he was looking for the sexual abuse talk. And he did ask me once, he's like, you shouldn't write about that, right? Because if anybody else were to read your stuff, and I laughed, I was like, you're the only one who does. He's like, yeah, but if your mom gets nosy, it's all over. And when he said that, I was like, you know what? If it's going to be over, it's going to be because I say so. So that was a choice that I had made when I was like 9. Like, nobody's going to force this away from me or from me. Like, this is going to be my own voice. So in a sense, since the age of 9, I knew I was going to be the one talking about it. But if he hadn't validated me, I don't know that I wouldn't have the relationship I have with him. I would have forgiven him eventually because I've forgiven all the rest of them without that validation. But it would have been a harder road.
Yeah, I get that. Like, it may be cliche, but it's the truth that sets us free, right? And it takes courage. It takes not just courage, but awareness and a deep love to be able to admit all the painful things that someone has perpetuated on someone else. To actually recognize that, oh, what I was doing caused you pain, and own that.
Well, here's a beautiful story. I was in the middle of like closing off my therapist from where I was living. I was only working with him for about 7 months, but what he taught me was amazing. A lot of tapping techniques, breathing techniques, stuff I could actually utilize. So I walked in there and said, "I'm not taking pills." He said, "Okay." "Do you want to sit down?" Like, that was rude. Like, "I can tell there's something about you and therapists in general. I'm not like them." I'm like, "Okay, good." He's in his 80s. So I'm on the phone with him, and my cousin from the other side of the family and his in-laws, the in-laws both worked at a teen prison. One of them had recently retired, and they overheard the conversation. So they asked my cousin, like, "What is that? What is she talking about?" And so he started to explain it to the best of his ability, but by that time I had gotten off the phone, and he's like, "Well, just ask her." So I went even faster than what we did. I was talking so fast I don't know if they heard it. But here's the sticks and bare bones of this. And they were like, "Would you want to speak in front of people?" I'm like, "Really? About this?" I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, "Nobody wants to hear this." And yes, I would. So I would go in, no script, no training, no nothing. And I'd go in and I'd speak to these teenagers. And I would get the one teacher at the time, we're friends now, she's retired, for the victim impact program. She would guide the conversation and pivot for me if I got stuck on something. Well, the point of telling this, for what you had said earlier, is that in one group, there was a boy, and I knew he sat right straight across from me. And to set this up, I didn't know if I could relate to them because most of them were of the Hispanic and Black communities. So what's this white girl coming in talking about this stuff where, like, am I going to be able to reach them?
Yeah, all these preconceptions that we have.
Right.
No.
And I wasn't prepared. Like I would go in and just talk like this. I didn't have a script or anything. But I was working with a friend and he happened to be Black, and I was like, I need to ask you a black and white question. He's like, shoot. And I told him what I just said to you guys. And he's like, you will reach them because you are authentic. Color has nothing to do with it. I was like, I needed you to say that. So anyways, it was this handsome Black boy sitting across from me, and he was eye contact the whole time. I swear I had this boy in tears. I get letters back from him. Most of them are like, thanks for coming. My name is so-and-so, But his was 2 pages. And his was, I do this stuff with my cousin, and I love her so much that when I get out of here, I'm going to tell her face to face, because I think telling her in a letter is crappy, that it's over because I love her and that I'll always be there for her. I don't want more damage on myself, and I don't want more damage on her. And that kid is flippin' brilliant. I mean, I expect him to be at NASA or something cool, like he gets it. And if he can get that, he can do anything. And it was that moment when I was like, I need to make a business of this. I don't even know how that looks, but I need more people like that to be looking at their lives.
So there's a question that I'm not sure if I'll be able to articulate it fully, because it connects to a couple of different things. What is that experience of wrongness that occurs in abusive situations? Like, what is that clues or that clued you in to this isn't whatever, like it's not what we think it is, like it's something possibly much more damaging or much more painful, or what is that experience? What is that brings awareness to the unlovingness of the situation?
The willingness to accept what's going on. So the night that I was asked to come down and start these sexual encounters, I crawled up underneath the dining room table, carpeted floor, old dining room table, and I begged the spirits, don't make me do this. I don't want to do this. And they said, you promised that you would experience this. You can change your mind. You can go back to bed. That's fine. But you promised you would experience this. My stomach was so heavy. I might as well eat rocks. And my feet and my fingers were tingling, and my throat was closing up. And so it was all physical, but it was triggered by emotions. It all felt wrong. Being around him that day felt wrong. When we had picked him up to adopt him, he was living in a house. There's a special name that the kids at the prison school told me, but it's a house for runaways, basically, without being an official house for runaways, right? And some guy had come in about drugs or whatever, and he was waving a gun around, and 2 bullets flew past my brother's head moments before my mom picked him up to adopt him. And so nothing about him felt right. And that's your intuition screaming at you, back off, go away, go the other direction, do something different. And I adopted that as a good feeling for a while, tried to, and then I had to later relearn that's my warning sign to not do this. That's my warning sign that this isn't okay, or this is not the path I'm supposed to take, or the direction I'm supposed to go. It shows up physically when you're out of integrity with who you are.
Yeah, exactly. And so like that, I love that description of intuition. Like that is very similar to my experience of it as well. And I don't know, it just felt important for some reason to kind of draw that out. I guess because like what seems to be coming up next is actually the deeper spiritual side of this, like actually connecting to the spirit guides in the way you're talking about, and recognizing that bigger I, like the I that exists outside of the mind body ego.
Yeah. Which they told me at one point that they were going to turn off my listening of them because I had to experience feeling alone in order to make a difference with the people who were actually alone or felt alone. So there was a good 3 or 4 years where I'm like, where are you? Where did you go? And then I gave up asking and went on with my life. So I imagine most people who don't believe in the divine live like that. They're not talking to somebody all the time. And then once towards the end of college, my, I don't know, what was that? The first year of college, my uncle passed away, their father of 3 of them. And I knew I was going to see them all. And there was really only one person that wasn't legally allowed to be there, which was Rob. And he was the only one I wanted to talk to because he had validated me, because he was responsible for what he had done as far as I understood it. Like he verbally said he was responsible.
Mm-hmm.
Was he being responsible with his own life? No, not at that point. So everything in what I thought was good for him, because he looked good at the funeral. And then, like I said, we were back in the courtroom. That felt horrible when I realized that we had the same exact judge. I had crossed my fingers that he had retired, but he didn't. And he remembered us, remembered the whole situation. How could you not, I guess? And he's like, you know what? I said that I would make sure that you understood what you did. And now I'm going to. You're in for 20 years. So that was not yet a time of truth and sentencing in the state of Wisconsin. It is now. So he was released, or, mandatory release date is years before your sentence is over. And I believe in that because now he has someone holding him to account for the remainder of his sentence, sort of like you get your driver's license at 16 and you're still living at home for a couple of years. You need guidance when you come out of something, when you come out of the hole. I mean, he was gone for a decade. Look how much stuff has improved with technology, how many things have happened in this world over the past 10 years. Not to mention that he was only 19 at the time, so he had a lot of growing up to do, catching up when he got out. So definitely believe in having parole agents, and I'm sad to see that that system's being closed down as far as it's known right now. So my intuition woke back up around the time of the funeral because I started talking to my uncle and he didn't want to leave. His spirit was like, my boys need someone who loves them. And I had then at that point realized that I do love them. Not that I can invite them all over for dinner or anything like that, but I do love them all. And I was like, well, why do I love them? So I kept going with this conversation. And then the one that was younger than me, it was actually sentenced for him for 3 months, statutory rape, because I was a little bit older than him. He had gotten into a car accident, and it was pretty bad. Fight for life, 5 surgeries in a matter of 6 or 7 hours for different parts of his body. He had a colostomy bag thing, not just for like his urine, but also for his stomach. Like he was so tore up. His face was fine, but everything else was mangled. So I'm like, I can't let him die thinking that I hate him. I drove through a snowstorm, 2 hours. It took normally an hour and a half drive, and sat at his bedside. We talked on the phone before I got there, which is really dumb. Don't be on the phone in a snowstorm, especially if it's someone who triggers you. It's really bad of you. And with morphine and all, he had suggested that he was still interested in me. I got to the hospital. He said he wasn't. So I told him, I just wanted to tell you I forgive you. I'm here to support you and your parents for like the next couple hours. I'm going home in the morning. Didn't talk to him for years after that. Then my a different uncle passed away 2 years ago. Just a week after that is when Rob got released from prison, and we reconnected on Facebook. This younger one in the accident, and he started sending me pictures of him without a shirt on, and he kept telling me I was his favorite and all this stuff. And I was like, we can't talk like that. You need to stop talking like that. And I was actually in a position where I could say that, where before I would just let it happen and feel horrible, that don't go down that path type feeling. So I ended up blocking him on Facebook before the funeral, and in the building, I went alone, no kids, no husband, just by myself, and I had set up a lunch date so that I had to be out of there at a certain time so I could give myself a break. And I walked past him, and he goes, "Hi, my favorite cousin." I was like, "Don't even." Like, first of all, he looked nothing like his pictures, so those pictures were really old. So I knew he was trying to manipulate me just based on that. And he felt wrong. Something about him felt wrong. So another funeral, which seems like the only time we all see each other now. Grandma passed away recently. So happy for her. She gets to be with her husband now, and she's very happy, I feel. And we were all there except for this one. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? Where is he? Why isn't he allowed here? So at that point in time, his emotional state was so erratic that his mother asked him, or no, that was the birthday party, Grandma's birthday party. His emotional state was so erratic that a few months before her funeral, he was asked not to attend. By the time her funeral happened, he was already in jail for something, and he had no idea she had passed away because his brother feared he would take his life if he knew. So he is completely mentally unstable, and he is now facing 32 years in prison. That's the impact of what we deal with. And I learned that all of my offenders were in some form sexually abused. So not surprising that these children, they were children when it happened. They took it out on a child, trying to understand it. And now here we are with our impacts of unresolved anger and frustration. And each of us have taken it a different way.
Yeah, and it's that perspective that seems to allow empathy.
Yes.
Like having that bigger picture of understanding that they're hurt too. Hurt people.
And I knew it. And this wasn't so much a heavy rock in my stomach, but it was more in my heart feeling. There's something else going on here, and I need to know the truth. So at one point in my life, I had tried to reconnect with them all. That was the whole trip in the snowstorm thing. There was other connections that I had tried to make. They weren't ready. And what I had to realize that even though I'm the victim, I don't have 100% of the say. I had to wait for them to be ready. And there's two of them that we're wishy-washy. I don't know that the conversations will ever happen, but we are now on terms enough that provided if there's another funeral, we're cool. Which the family's big, so it's likely. Hopefully not for a long time. We have to take care of ourselves, and we have to give space for others to take care of themselves. So I was triggering some of them. I was causing more pain than I was healing anything. I had one of them tell me I had more sexual encounters before the age of 12 than I could ever put into numbers. And he doesn't want to talk about it and doesn't want to do anything, but he did talk about it. I'm like, oh my God.
And just that confession alone, like,
Yeah. Like I hope it did something for him because it did something for me. He would always tell me that my life is like the life of a princess in comparison to his, but he would never tell me what it was. Even when we were speaking, even he would never let me in. Rob did, somewhat, but they were all very closed off. So as a child, I felt like I was doing them a service of being kind and loving to them. I felt useful. And because our the related parents, so like their father, my mother, um, they were all traumatized. So their father was molested by his pastor. Chances are another brother was as well. Um, my mother was molested by her oldest brother. It's generational effect and it impacts. You can't go through life and say my kids are not going to be impacted by the emotional stress that I put on myself or the emotional stress that I'm not working on with myself. That's stupid. Okay, they will feel it. My children have felt the effects of it. They know my anger. I wish they never did, but they know it. You know, my relationship with my husband, their relationships with their girlfriends or wives or whatever it is that they've got going on are impacted by this.
yeah,
So,
and
and all we wanted to do was what? Feel loved.
exactly.
And we were trying to find it in all the wrong ways.
And this may not be the only way to break this cycle of inequity, but it feels like an extremely powerful way of just actually exposing it and talking about it and sharing it. Because it seems to be that it's the silence that allows it to continue and even like shames people in to not being honest about what's going on with themselves or with others. And that just perpetuates it over and over and over again.
When you said that, I wanted to jump out of my skin. So, where I got my boldness from was pissing those people off who wanted to suppress it for the rest of our lives. I wanted them to be mad.
Yeah.
I wanted them to think about what the hell was happening behind their backs because they weren't dealing with themselves. We were not in an age in the 90s, in the 80s to say, I hurt. It was tough it up. Guys, don't
Mhm.
cry. Girls, stop crying. Don't express your emotions. Now, in the early 2000s, and now we're finally in a space where the whole society is going, I need to take care of myself so that I can take care of my family, so that I can have good moments in my life. Let's heal. Let's do it now and let's do it together. Let's share our stories.
Mhm. Absolutely. It took me a long time to actually come to acceptance with what this world is. Um, you know, I will probably say this thousands and more times in my lifetime, but there's this saying in statistics that all models are wrong, but some models are useful. And there's a model, a way that I choose to look at the world that has really helped me connect and have compassion and empathy for not just myself, but for everyone who's suffering and everyone who is being violent and creating more suffering. Um, and what that bigger picture is, I have learned so much from my own pain, but it did not happen until I chose to lean into it and seek the lessons that could have potentially been there. Like I didn't know there would be lessons there at the time,
Yeah.
but you know, numbing out wasn't helping. Like I did it for years and just ended up even in more pain, and trying to numb that pain just brought even more pain.
And
And
the repercussions of it. So let's say we're talking about addiction here.
mhm,
You've got not only the impact of your emotional pain, but also the impact of your abuse of the narcotics and the alcohol. So you got your liver to deal with, you got your blood pressure to deal with, you got your skin to deal with. Everything hurts. And now you're seeing it physically.
yeah. And if it hadn't been for those experiences, I wouldn't be capable of holding space for this conversation today. Like, I wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't be able to have this conversation today.
Right.
And I love the way the Judy, who I interviewed, like my first interview that I did like this, she wrote a book called My Beautiful Tragedy about her son who overdosed when he was 18, died of an opioid overdose when he was 18. And like, it was a long way around to get to that view for her, but the gift of his death, like the possibilities that are now opening up in her life for her and her husband because of his death, are so much bigger than anything they had previously imagined before.
And the stand that she gets to take, not has to, not a must, that she gets to take, the book she got the opportunity to write, and the
Absolutely.
people that she gets to impact.
Exactly. And so to me, this entire world, it's a sandbox, it's a school, it's a place where there's free will, and so anything can happen, and there's an opportunity to learn from everything.
You just have to be willing.
Exactly. It's that choice. We have to be willing to make that choice. And before we can make the choice, there has to be awareness that there even is a choice.
Yeah.
Which,
And there's always a choice.
yes.
You can choose to stay in your home or become a runaway. You can choose to allow your husband to beat on you or leave him forever. Take the kids with you, by the way. You can choose to abandon your infant child, or you can choose to tough it up and make it happen that you stay a family.
Or I can choose to end this life, or recognize that every single breath I take is a choice. And if I'm going to continue breathing, I'm going to live it.
Yep.
I'm going to make the best of every breath I take.
I actually made a painting called Last Breath, and it's just a face with blue lips and little like tribal acid shaped things coming out of her mouth. And I drew that because it was a pivot in my life. The last breath I took of wanting to die, and the first breath I took of wanting to live.
Yeah. And that's, like, I feel like that is the ultimate choice. Like that right there. And it's a choice that for years I wasn't even aware was possible. I didn't recognize that there was a choice there, and because I did not recognize that there was a choice, I was subconsciously choosing to die every single moment.
And when you choose that, in some way you are.
Mm-hmm.
Your health is diminishing because you have that thought. Your choices of the food that you eat, or how late you stay up, or skip a meal, or you're making choices to die faster.
Absolutely. That is the power of manifestation to me. There was a poem. There's a group called the Wisdom Weavers. They're a group of indigenous elders who are starting to share their ancestral knowledge with the world.
Wow.
And one of the lines of the poem is, fear is the greatest way to manifest what we don't want.
Exactly. Well, have you ever heard of the law of attraction?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I lived my life on that. I didn't know what it was. I didn't have the
Right.
vocabulary for it, but I live my life like that. Everything that is going on, I will be responsible for. I attracted this. Let's look at it again with the mindset and the body one more time. when I was 7 years old, I made up my mind that I did not deserve to eat. So I made sure my sister was fed, and I wouldn't eat. So I've struggled up until just a couple weeks ago, making sure that I eat 3 meals a day and drink X amount of water. And so I'm deal with my doctor thinks I have hypertension. I was mad at her, so I didn't go back. um, and I also found a way to keep my blood pressure lower, and it was multiple things, and it's going to be different for everybody. But I had so much anger that my liver was yelling at me, and I'm not an alcoholic. I barely drink. I barely eat sugar. So my body was screaming at me, "Stop torturing me. Stop killing." So 3 meals a day, 82 ounces of water a day, and that's the bare minimum. I take supplements, and I detox with teas. Now that we don't have any snow here, we've been walking. I have a hyper dog, so that's easy. You know, he's like, "Hey, take me for a walk." You have no choice. He will calm down after. Trust me. Have to go. Enjoying the moments. You know, constantly going, okay, if there's a pain here, am I ready to release this? This pain right here that I love so much, that's done so much for me. Am I ready to release this? And the pain goes away. Willing to do alternatives, energy healing, prayer, meditation. I set my alarm for 7 this morning, and then I set it for 7:15. Why? Gives me 15 minutes of meditating. Because I'm meditating and releasing the strains of my pelvic area, which of course is the sexual abuse, and then 2 daughters later, if you can imagine pushing them out. All that is like this. And what I want is it to be like this. So I stay in bed for this meditation so that I completely relax my spine and I'm not putting any pressure on my pelvic bone. And I just think, relax. And sometimes I drift back into sleep. That's why the alarm. And that's all I'm thinking is that area and relax. And if something else hurts, I'll move my attention there for a little bit and then I come back. And it's been loosening up. It's been working. And if you say you've got back pain, it's going to take you a couple weeks probably to believe that you can do this, but every day, okay, back, just relax. I love you. Relax. Thank you for your support. Relax. Even as I'm saying that right now as a demonstration to you, I felt my spine relax because now my body's used to hearing me say something like that. And it doesn't have to be out loud, but it helps when you're first starting out. Relax. I say it, I have that vibration. I hear it, I have that vibration. And the body knows to do it. Now, it takes time. I told that to my dad. Relax your spine on your drive home from work. He laughed at me. He doesn't believe you can do it.
And because he doesn't believe, it won't happen.
Exactly. But I did this to my body. I starved it. When I was pregnant, I'm like, this is going to be my jump start. I'm hungry all the time. But then it got too stressful and I forgot to eat. When you're not sleeping, newborns are crazy. They are beautiful and they need something all the time. Except for when they want to sleep and you want to do something for yourself and then they wake up. It's like, come on. So it's stressful. So I forgot to eat. I was already in that habit. So I wanted to say that the same boldness that I used to allow me to tell my story to the school counselor was the same exact boldness that had the idea of a business form and take flight. It was the same that got me into that prison with those teens and talk, the parole hearings. That boldness is what I use to push to the other side of whatever block is there. So I created this business called Arise Empowered, LLC, empowering one voice at a time. And inside of Arise Empowered, I have Breakthrough and Thrive, which is a summit that just completed my 4th one. The summit actually took place before I created the business because I was like, I'm testing this. Can I see if I can do this? So it's generally 21 to 22 speakers, some of them, most of them actually have been sexually abused, and they openly share, at least, yes, I have been. Some of
Mhm.
them share more than that. They are healers in so many different areas of the world and life, and I'm like, I wouldn't even have known that that would be something that could have worked and is possible. So there are things like EFT, angel healing, chiropractics, talk therapy, and how talk therapy has changed in the past decade.
Mhm.
I wouldn't have ever wanted to trust that system again, knowing what my mom went through. But it is different now. You're not expected to sit there for 30 years on a couch telling the same story every single time. You're expected to heal. The pills are given to you if everything else they've tried that they know in their little handbook didn't work. Now, okay, let's just take the edge off with this pill for just a little while, and then we'll take you back off it and see how you go. Some people have to stay on it. Some people prefer to stay on it, I should say. Um, Others don't after time. I could tell you that if I went to a therapist's office and told them in detail all of the mind stuff that I went through, I probably would have been medicated for years already.
Mhm.
Um, so it's a choice, and it's teamwork, having someone to work with you. Um, so these brilliant speakers, some of them are authors, some of them have podcasts. I even had Kira Schaefer from As You With Publishing, which I'll talk about my books in just a second, on there. And it's just an absolute brilliant space to get to know what sexual abuse is. Because for some of us are like, I even experienced sexual abuse that I didn't have a definition for, didn't know that it was. So we talk about stuff like that and bring awareness to it so you can heal it. Um, and I leave it all open for 11 days, and I do it twice a year.
Mhm.
So this last topic was awakening your voice. The next one is creating your life.
And how does this take? Like, I'm guessing in the past has been a physical event. Like people can actually go to a location, hear the speakers.
No,
It's all online.
yep, all online from the start. Helps the stay-at-home mom to be able to do your work at home. So I was really happy to know that I didn't have to, do these big events like this and stress myself out even more, something brand new. So, and it's purchasable in the end. I'm working on it right now to be purchasable, and that you just download all of it if you want. And I have a guidebook that has like the speaker's picture, bio, the title of what the conversation is. You have room to journal. You have their contact information, and you have the link that's always going back to the Facebook group, private Facebook group, to talk about the Breakthrough and Thrive Summit and what you learned from it yourself. And I'll put polls up there or questions up there. Outside of the summits, I do still try to hang out in there a little bit here and there, but not as heavily as I do when we have the summit going or when we're prepping for it. And really, anybody can come on. I'm not expecting that you have a million followers or anything. If you're ready to share your story in a public arena that is completely understanding, you don't have to share it with anybody outside of the Breakthrough and Thrive community, but you can come on the stage and share your experience and be heard. And I coach you. It's not this long. It's 30 minutes. I coach you. We come up with bullet points to help guide us, questions that I might ask. It's a conversation because I'll share things too. And it's I heard relaxing, I've heard fun, I heard enjoyable, and we're talking about heavy stuff.
Yeah. So real quick, just share one more time for the people who are going to be watching later. Where do they go to get involved in this?
So yeah, if you just write to me, info@ariseempowered.com.
Actually, I think we can just
Um,
put that up on the screen for a second.
that's the best way to contact me about speaking, like if you want me to speak or if you want to speak. uh, then I have a program called the Empowerment Program. It launched last month. So it's brand new. I only have a couple people in it, and it's amazing. And it's 12 weeks long, and we are creating the foundation you never had, or the foundation you wish you had. So what is that we're talking about? What is responsibility? What is integrity? What is forgiveness? Can I do it right now? Do I want to? What is gratitude? Why does that make a difference in my life? Nutrition, hydration, movement. I don't call it exercise. I don't like that word. Movement. Um,
Fair. Yeah.
um, what else do we talk about? We talk about creativity. I throw in spirituality, and of course, we have to talk about sex. That comes later, but we gotta talk about that. And we do this right now. I'm offering it as a group program, so it'd be weekly phone calls that you attend. I'll record it and post it inside the group. But just you have to be active in it. You can't be off to the sidelines. There's journal work, quick little assignments, tools and tricks to use for your own personal healing. And again, info@horizonpower.com if you're interested in that at all. So with the program and the Breakthrough and Thrive, and I'm also an artist and graphic designer on the side. I'm also an author, and I'll show the books that I have in front of me right now. When Angels Speak. These are all compilation books, so there's more than one author. Published by As You Wish Publishing. If you've ever thought of being an author, this is a great place to test out. It's articles. So you don't write a chapter, you don't write a book, you write an article. And you base it off your personal experiences and whatever the topic of the book might be. So this one's this way.
There it is.
When Angels Speak. And it's all spiritual. It could be Jesus, it could be Isis, like whatever deity that you recognize yourself with and you're authentic with. That kind of stuff's in here. I don't really give the universe a name. I say they and them, but that story is in here. Manifestations. These are things like you read one article a day or something. Manifestations is, what is a manifestation? It's something that you say that you want in your life, and then it gets fulfilled because you obtain it because you said you would. And you don't know how it's going to be done, and you don't have the answers, and you don't know where the funding's going to come from. And I didn't know how I was going to live in central Wisconsin, but I knew I wanted to. I didn't know how I was going to meet my dream guy, and I listed every day and talked to him all the time. And then he showed up in my life, and I said, "Guess what? We're getting married." He goes, "Oh, really? You think so?" Little did he know it was all planned. Life coach was the first one I was in. So there's practices in here. Just try them. If they don't work, don't use them. If they work, keep them. And then inspirations for daily happiness. I forgot what I wrote about in this one. I have a feeling it's about my dad. But these things, when you're struggling to maintain, which by the way, you can't maintain happiness 24/7, that's exhausting. But when you're struggling, this stuff, and even if you're not, it's very powerful stuff. A lot of these authors in here have been on my summit. And if they haven't already, they will be probably. Just because our community is like that. We all think positive, powerful work. Heal. You're worth it. You're strong. We all think like that. And so let's see. I got Arise Empowered, Breakthrough and Thrive, multiple books. If you want to purchase any of these books, please write to me at info@horizonpowered.com. I will sign it. And they are going for $20, and I'll mail it right to you.
I'm just going to leave that email address up on the screen for a little bit longer as we're talking. For if you're just joining us, you're just hopping in. This is JamieLynn Warber, and she has been a wealth of information and stories and honesty and intimacy and integrity and life experience and forgiveness, most of all. I feel like let's dive into forgiveness for a little bit if you're up for that.
Yeah.
I know we talked about it a little bit earlier with Rob and your experience of him actually confessing everything. And just for some context, so Rob was one of her 5 sexual abusers. And from what I gathered, kind of the one that actually sort of empowered you in a way, like that confession that he wrote. It felt like it was that door that opened to empathy and compassion and forgiveness and for yourself and for him, and it seems to have grown just since then.
Yeah.
So
I knew it moment, like that was such a big win. Like, yes, I know who this man is, and I'm so glad, and I'm never letting that go.
oh. And so, like, what is forgiveness to you? Like, what does that actually mean to you?
It's not for the person who hurt you. It's for yourself. It's a gift to yourself to say, I'm no longer going to hold on to this. I am no longer, and as I'm saying these words, I can feel another level of forgiveness occurring. I'm not going to hold on to this. It's not mine to keep anymore. You can have it back.
Mm-hmm.
I don't condone what you did. And it doesn't mean we're going to be friends. And I forgive you for the sake of myself. And my lovely Rob, he had a quote from Buddha, and I might mess it up because I don't have it in front of me. But it's something about holding on to a hot coal with the intention of throwing at someone. Who's getting hurt when you're holding on to that hot coal? You are.
Exactly.
So I let go of hurting myself further. That's forgiveness. They can do whatever they want. In fact, they will do whatever they want. I'm not going to control anyone or try. I can't. It's not possible. But I can forgive and love unconditionally in my own ways.
And from that place, you and Rob actually created a lot of things together. Yeah. Like it's a lot of this.
In a sense, yeah. I think it was the third or fourth parole hearing. I was granted an opportunity to talk to him a little bit. And I had said, I'm going to start a company about sexual abuse. No, about healing from sexual abuse. And he said, good. Or something to that effect. I'm like, really? Okay. I'll take that. It was like confirmation. Yes, you should. At my grandma's funeral, I was so ecstatic because I had the logo all made up, everything. And I showed it to him. I was like, this is our logo. And he's like, I love it. I was like, great. I do envision he's got a good amount of healing yet to do for himself. He's got a good amount of anger left. But eventually I do see that he'd be a partner in the business. We'd be speaking together, which duos are rare to begin with. But what I would love to do is, well, you guys know the secret now, but go up on stage and go, this is what happened to both of us. Now, which one is the offender and which one is the victim? Because we are both offenders and we are both victims. According to the law, he's only an offender. They didn't have it documented about his abuse until I asked the question at the parole hearing. And he was resistant for a minute. And then he was in shock. And so it's a small room, it's like a closet almost. It's a very small room. Dinner table barely fit in there. And so we've got the commissioner across from me. I'm over in this corner. I've got my victim's advocate next to me, and he's over there by the door. And he's not allowed to look at me. This is the very first parole hearing. And my question was he ever abused? And she's like, I'm curious about that too. Because I've seen so many cases like this. There had to have been something, right? And I was like, exactly. Like, okay, you can ask up to 5 questions, and then if I feel like there's good space for it, I will ask for it on your behalf, but not say that it's from you, so that he thinks it's from me. So we were manipulating the situation so that I basically didn't have a voice that day. I was just an observer. And then I was told, if there are any outbursts between either of us, we would both be removed and I won't be allowed to come back. So she asked, and he bowed his head and he said yes. And he told a little bit of the story about what happened to him, which I have permission to share. It was 2 neighbor girls. They told him that they loved him. They showed him what to do with his body pretty much. And then a couple of years later said that they had no use for him anymore. So he was completely devastated. He thought that he was in love with both of them. He thought that it meant something to them. And so by the time I came into the picture, it was just a cupcake. He was so sad. And his brother, there was talk about his brother moving in with me, and becoming my brother. So I gave him this cupcake, and Grandma made gourmet cupcakes. It was brilliant. I tried to make them for the funeral. They weren't quite right. I was told over and over. I gave him this cupcake, and he said, "That's when I realized that you cared." And so he's not even a relation to me. He's Puerto Rican. So he grew up in his own household. He had been told that he was not family. I mean, I get racism. Not really, because it's stupid, but it's out there, right? And it's out there, not in your home. He had it at home. He wasn't safe from it. So I didn't see him that way. I wasn't taught to see people that way. So he took advantage of that, and he admitted to that. And while we were in the parole hearing, he's like, I didn't want to use it as a justification. And when I say he was in shock, he kept repeating that phrase. I didn't want to use it as justification. That's not why I did this. That's not why I did this. He was so conditioned at this point that it was absolutely his choice and responsibility, even though he was a child who was sexually abused.
Mm.
Prison made it known to him that this was ultimately his fault. And the commissioner said, it does matter. She gave him a gift that day. What happened to you matters. You matter. This matters.
Yeah.
Your sentence might have been completely different if you would have shared that to begin with. How would a 19-year-old know? But he got empathy from the commissioner that day and me. Like, I knew, I just didn't know what or who or whatever. So he's a very compassionate person. He works very hard, and he deserves a good life. And I will never, I was angry, sure, as part of healing, but I'm not going to hold this against him. He's so responsible for that impact that he had. And even inside of the interview I just did with him, I had a realization while we were talking that our lives got taken from us. Our intimacy as 20-some-year-olds got taken from us. We couldn't even really fully, either one of us. He was dealing with his choices of healing, which were drugs and a few other things. And I was dealing with mine, which was anger. So there was no real exploration of who either of us wanted to be as a sexual being. That was taken away. So when I shared that we both had that taken away from us, I thought that in that idea, we were both equally impacted by this.
Mm.
He's the offender and the victim. It's supposed to be different. It's not different. Not for an offender who gets what's happened.
Yeah.
It's responsibility.
Yeah, there's a concept in Lomi Lomi, which is the old Hawaiian way of being, the old Hawaiian healing arts. They don't have words for patient and doctor. They don't there's only giver and receiver. And in a Lomi Lomi session, giver and receiver, that role can swap back and forth multiple times in a given session. And it feels like it's the same way on the other end of the spectrum with the abusive, the abuser and the victim, that's not a static role, that swaps back and forth multiple times.
They can.
Um,
If you feel completely suppressed, you're not aware of it.
Mhm.
And I felt suppressed. Like my voice didn't matter, except with Rob. My voice mattered with him. He held it different. So because he did that, I understood what it felt like to have a healthy relationship where I felt like I had a say. And so I give credit to that, because without that and without how wonderful my dad is, I wouldn't have known otherwise, in my subconscious, what a good man and wife relationship would be. So there's a lot of, there are some aspects that my husband has that are exactly my dad, which is brilliant because they get along so well. And as my husband and Rob were talking at this last funeral, I was realizing they both love to pick on me a lot. It's funny for them. Um, they they both would rather see me smile than see me cry, you know. So there are aspects that I'm so grateful to have experienced in the midst of not having that anywhere else in my life, because otherwise my relationship wouldn't work. It, like, for example, if Rob was not one of my offenders, I probably would be in an abusive relationship right now.
Mm.
If my dad wasn't in my life, definitely. So these people, I mean, anybody who's listening, you matter as a parent. You matter as an aunt or an uncle. I had so many aunts and uncles that were very supportive of me. That matters. You do make a difference. One conversation.
That can be all it takes often. It's just that one, like, just purely honest, open sharing.
Yeah.
Um,
So that's,
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so that's my story.
That feels like part of it, definitely. And that may be a good place to end. We are coming up on an hour and 45 minutes. Um, but before we close completely, is there anything else outside of what we've already talked about that feels present for you that you'd like to dive into briefly? Like any questions you have for me, any experiences that haven't come up that have been really impactful in opening your heart to compassion and empathy?
It's a good question, and I don't have any questions resonating right now, but I do have a poll to do a short meditation.
Sure.
Um, so with my dog picking on me, let's see how that goes. Yeah.
No.
He's like, "Where's my today?" Exactly.
No, hi puppy. Big puppy.
This meditation, it's real super simple, and you can place your hand on your heart, or you can just hold your hand, and you let your eyes rest and your spine rest. And you take in a nice deep breath through your nose, and you're breathing in this amazing white healing light. And when you exhale, you're letting go of everything suppressed and red. So in through the nose and out through the mouth, as deep as you can go. And you say a few choice words to yourself, whatever comes to you. I am worthy. I am amazing. I am love. I am joy. And you can say things that you need. Like, let's say you're nervous. You say, I am calm. I am at peace. Let's say you're angry. I'm relaxed. And I'm just exactly where I need to be right now. And then if you feel like you've said everything that you need to hear for yourself or that you'd like to say, you slowly come back with one more breath. And just say, I love you. And start to open your eyes. And start to present yourself to where you are at. And just love where you're at right now. And it literally took 30, 40 seconds to do. And how do you feel now?
Refreshed, relaxed,
Yeah.
centered.
It's only seconds, and you're telling yourself what you need. We need love. You can't go wrong with that one.
I'd actually take that one step further. I am love.
Yeah,
You are
perfect.
love.
Yep. Oh, yes, you are too. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
You crazy dog.
What's your puppy's name?
Kuma. It means bear. I had a husky, and we named her Coda, and she adopted the name Bear for a next door neighbor dog who they weren't able to keep, so we would call her Coda Bear. And I felt my intuition last year, my birthday. I needed a dog, and I was ready for one. And before Coda passed away, I asked her to bring me the perfect pup for her girls and for our family. So I ran around the 2 different dog shelters, drove over 2 hours to do all this. Got an email back because I'd already been looking for a few days. And she's like, well, the one you want will eat your cat. So there's one I got here, and he's afraid of cats, but he's not a girl like you wanted, and he's a mix. I think he's lab and husky. And I said, okay, I'm on my way. She's like, now? Yeah, I'm on my way. So for the 45-minute drive, they ran him like crazy.
Oh.
And by the time I got to him, he was kind of mellow, but not really. And he runs right up to me, and he licks the inside of my arm like crazy. Like he wouldn't stop. He still doesn't stop.
No.
And then he runs over to my daughter, and he lays down to take a breath, and he looks up at her like, come on. And I'm like, girl, he's talking to you. Sit down. So she sits down. She's like, now what? And then he like fell into her. Texting my husband, I'm like, you didn't get to pick him, but we got our dog. 4 days later, we got to take him home.
Oh, I'm glad. Hi, Kuma.
Yeah.
There's an invitation in that I'd like to extend to everyone, and just everyone that's watching, and that is to try talking to other beings, not just people, but animals, trees, plants. Like just try it. You might be surprised at what you discover. I traveled with a woman on Big Island for 2-ish years. We traveled and lived together basically. And she had 2 cats, Magic Cat and Habibi.
Wow.
And we could go anywhere, open the doors of the car, and just let them out and let them roam. And they would always come back. And I like, to this day, the only explanation I have for that is like she actually talked to them when they first came into her life. She set them down and she had a conversation. She said, I travel a lot. If you want to be with me, you need to promise that when I call your name, you come back.
Yeah.
And they did, and they do. Although it was kind of funny because every once in a while, they would always come and let us know where they were, but they wouldn't always necessarily come back to the car.
Yeah, like I'm not ready to go yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Still here.
And it was those moments. Like I love those moments because like, there was one particular time we were down at Millie, and Habibi would just not. Like she came to the point where we could see her, but she would not come to the car. And she kept saying, no, there's more here you need to discover. Like we were ready to go. We had breakfast. Like we were, but she just wouldn't come. And so like we've learned to listen to the cat's intuitions. So we just kind of stayed and started talking, and then eventually went for a walk, and we found the most amazing, magical black sand beach, possibly on the entire island, and it just had a wonderful experience there. Got to swim. There's no one else around, so we didn't have to worry about having to wear clothes. Like it was phenomenal, and it would not have happened if it hadn't been for Habibi going, no, there's more for you to discover here.
Thank you. I got a story about a kitty cat. So my husband and I wanted a pet with him other than the lizard I had, because you can't really cuddle the lizard very much. Bearded dragon, so I cuddled her a little, but she's not soft, so I needed a cat. His coworker was trying to get rid of cats, and his brother and sister, and he wanted the one and I wanted the other, so we got them both. And my husband used to eat these things from Aldi's. It was breakfast pastry, so it would be a cardboard box with a bunch of them in. He's really not wanting me to do this anymore.
He's ready for that walk, so I feel like this might be.
I came home one day and they were both cuddled up inside of this box. I got a picture of that. Well, we got so attached to them, and I talked to them all the time, that Buddy, the big orange one, 32 pounds, and that was a good weight for him because he was a big cat. He weighed more than my dog. he weighed more than my husky, 1 pound. And then we took him in the vet one time, and he was curled up like this big, and she's pulling him out. She's like, he's got to lose like 15 pounds. I'm like, okay. She's pulling him out. He reaches to the other side of the table. She's like, maybe like 2 pounds. Like, he's a big boy. So anyways, I'll be cooking dinner, and he'd be like, low meow. And I'm like, what? You want to come up here? Well, but yeah, Mom, but I can't go on the counter because you'll smack my butt. So I pulled up the chair, and I'm curious, So he jumps up on the chair, and I was like, is that what you wanted? Yeah. And so we sat there and talked. And then I realized that he could understand some things telepathically or whatever. So I taught him a trick. Buddy, cover your face. So he'd go and cover his face. And when he wanted attention after that, he would cover his face and go, Mom, look it, I'm covering my face. And so I picked him up one time, and he was mad about something. And I'm like, give me a kiss. And he's like, no, flat cat face. Yeah. I'm like, give me a kiss and I'll let you down. No, like a toddler. Seriously, I'll let you go if you just give me a kiss. Whap! His head went into my mouth. I think I bit him. He's like, here's your damn kiss. No, let me. So, Dixie too. She had her own ways, but Buddy's a lot more. Tabby cat, if anyone's interested. He's passed on now, but I'd get another tabby. But I don't know if I'll do more cats. You gotta find the joy in life. You gotta find community however you can, and especially with being on lockdown, your pets might be your only community. And pets are unconditional love. Poor things. You could kick them across the room and they'll still run back to you like, hug me, pet me. I obviously don't recommend that, but I'm just saying that they won't turn away from you. So that's a good place to start.
Yeah. And don't be scared to, talk to them, share how you feel.
Yeah.
Like, really say that again.
Good practice. Because you hear yourself saying what hurts you the most to your pet, and they know.
Yeah.
My husband came home, he wasn't feeling good, and Kuma went over by him and like put his head up on the knee and was like, well, maybe you don't want to be touched. So he backed off a little, and he's like, I think he knows. I was like, I'm sure he does. He doesn't like the way your body's moving right now. He should be hyper, like he's playing with my arms and stuff, and stop immediately if something's wrong. If they know.
These are the gifts of this world. And it's like, to me, like we wouldn't be able to experience the joy of these gifts if it wasn't for being able to experience the pain too. Like there would be no contrast.
And we need contrast. We
Yeah.
can't make ourselves wrong for the experiences that we've had.
Absolutely. And on that note, I really feel like he wants to walk. So
Yeah, he does.
yeah, let's bring this to a close. And JamieLynn, thank you so very much. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Once again, if anyone wants to get in touch with her, buy any of the books, get involved with the summit, whatever, shoot her an email. It's info@arisempowered.com.
Don't
She
forget
is,
about the empowerment program.
and the empowerment program. Yes, thank you. That too, the 12-week empowerment program that is happening. And you can find out all those things just by shooting your email. You don't have an actual website, do you?
I do, but I don't like it. It's not pretty yet.
Okay. All right. So we'll hold off on sharing that. But
and I do want to offer a free 30-minute support call. We just talk about you and what you're up to, what you want to do with your life. And if it happens that one of the programs that I offer or have would work for you, I'll suggest it. If it doesn't, we just had a nice conversation about your future.
Beautiful. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, JamieLynn, it has been a pleasure. And guys, until next time, I'm Matthew. This has been a one-day virtual stage deep dive with JamieLynn Warber. And I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day. Aloha.